Scott Grayson's grades are out. The report card is not looking good. Check it out at 973ESPN.com. Grayson's grades are brought to you by Cross County Connection, the region's transportation management association. They are dedicated to improving the quality of life in South Jersey through transportation solutions. Learn more about Cross County Connection online at www.driveless.com. Scott Grayson, Props and Locks, Friday nights, Fox 29, and, of course, Grayson's grades at 973ESPN.com. Well, it was another tough one for Doug Pederson and Carson Wentz. We'll start there, Scott, as we've had the first 3 weeks of the season, and you gave Doug Pederson an F, and you gave Carson Wentz a D. That seems to be rinse, wash, and repeat so far this season.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's what the results have kind of looked like as well. I guess we'll start with Doug. I'm just not into playing for a tie. I don't understand the mentality of that, and I don't understand particularly him having that mentality with how aggressive we've seen him be in his time here in Philadelphia, particularly even the season where they went on to win the Super Bowl. I mean, there was a lot, and even this year he's gone for it on fourth down and done things. You know, I understand if the Bengals had a couple of timeouts left, even if they had one timeout left, you're afraid of losing, but I still got to believe you go for the win. What message are you sending your defense when you don't try to kick that or go for it on fourth down? You're afraid they're going to give up 15, 20 yards on one play and set up a field goal for the other team to win the game. I still think a tie likely would have happened if they had failed by either kicking the 64-yarder or going for it on 4th and 12 and trying to hopefully get a kickoff. Either way, I think you save face a little bit. Another thing that I thought was odd was also the fact that, and I get going into overtime, but, you know, you're at home. You could go for two at the end of the game and try for the win. Again, an aggressive thing. You need to get 2 yards, and you win the game potentially there with that play. Again, Doug Pederson chose not to do that. I just don't see – I see a coach right now who looks lost to me. I see a coach who doesn't seem to have control of his offense or his quarterback. And, you know, can it be fixed? Yeah, it can be fixed. I think this team badly needs a bye week for him to do a little self-evaluation because there's really not time for that. And, you know, the funny thing is that with the tie, and we could look back weeks from now, they picked up half a game on everybody else in the division yesterday, and we could look back and say, well, that tie is the reason why they ended up edging out this team or that team. I mean, I'm not seeing it right now, but I just don't understand the mentality of playing for a tie. And you talked about Wentz. You gave him a D. I just thought, you know, he had an F in my mind until the end of the game when he was able to make a score that they badly needed. He did get the team down and into the end zone to tie the game. To me, I thought that was worth enough to get him out of the F range. But either way, his mechanics are lost. He looks off. He isn't hitting with guys downfield. He's missing short throws, medium range throws. He's throwing, completing less than 60% of his passes this season. That's just not what a franchise quarterback is doing and in this offense. And I just think that he's got to find himself some more. He's got to find a way to get his mechanics back down. To me, ever since John DeFilippo left, his mechanics have been steadily declining year to year. And that's something he's going to have to fix here as this team moves forward.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you said you were at an F, and then he had the one. He did have the one drive. He ran a little bit. He did lead him to that tying touchdown, so I can understand that. But the tie situation, now the tie has helped them in the past. They had the year where they went 9-6-1, so you're right about that whole tie thing. But, man, it just feels different. Like, it just feels like the reasons in the past the team had struggled may have been injury-related or just a couple things. It feels like the team's not playing well because the quarterback's not playing well, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, no, I'll give – first of all, let me say this, because I thought this yesterday. Could you imagine if that stadium were packed full of fans, the roar of boos that team would have left the field to, and Doug Pederson himself as well? Obviously, they left it quiet and probably preferred that, but that to me was something that I found interesting if you stop and think about that moment of what it could have sounded like there. But you look at, I mean, the way this team's playing, the quarterback, I will say this for Carson, you know, he doesn't have his top three receivers right now. You can even say four of his top five by throwing Goddard in the mix. And that's not an excuse because he was able to do and work with that last year at the end of the season when he needed to. But, you know, he's got to find a way to make guys – look, franchise quarterbacks make everyone around them better, and right now he's not doing that. So he's got to find a way to do that.
Real quick, you gave Greg Ward an A. You gave Zach Ertz an A. It seemed to me that Ward is the only guy that he trusts yesterday. Obviously, Ertz, we know he trusts him, but I'm talking about the wideout. It felt like Ward was the only guy that he trusted at all yesterday.
Yeah, and I think that showed. I said that. He became a steady target for Wentz at the end of last season, and I think that's what Wentz is going back to. He found a guy he could rely on that if he put it near him, he would catch the ball, and that's what Ward is doing. And to Ward's credit, I mean, the guy came out of nowhere last year. It's been well documented, the road he's made to get to where he is. But, look, he had a very productive game yesterday, and he is the only receiver really doing that. And he is becoming that guy that Wentz is starting to rely on. And he's got to have more. He's got to find a way to throw these guys open a little bit, too. And he's just not making throws. He's just not making the throws these guys need him to make. He's not making the reads that they need him to make. He has gotten better from the 8-sack game against Washington, where he's at least at times throwing it away, or he's getting out of the pocket and trying to run. Did make some productive plays yesterday with his legs, but I don't think I think you're onto something, Mike. I really don't think he trusts anybody out there, and it's really getting in his head. And I think he's starting to think he's got to make a perfect pass. And you're a baseball guy, Mike. You try to make that perfect pitch to the perfect spot, you always miss. So if you're aiming for a spot, you're going to miss. And I think that's what he's doing a lot of. His mechanics are they're fleeting him, and he's not trusting his receivers to go make a play.
The one play that killed me the most was the 3rd and 10 to the sideline of Miles Sanders where he overthrew him.
Yep.
When I saw that, I was just deflated on my couch. But I want to get your thoughts on the offensive line because I thought Jason Peters probably had the worst game of his entire career, and then factor in what Matt Pryor did on a game-winning field goal in overtime. That's a cuttable offense, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, it is definitely a costly mistake for Matt Pryor. And you heard Brandon Graham. I was listening to him after the game yesterday talk, and somebody asked him about how Matt Pryor was or how the locker room was, and Pryor was apparently beside himself in his locker. And Graham said, I'm happy to see that. If he wasn't emotional or upset about it, I'd be worried. But, that's a huge mistake. It's a costly penalty. He's got to fix that. He can't make that mistake in the NFL. It cost his team potentially a win, no doubt about it. And you mentioned Jason Peters. Father Time is definitely getting the edge on Jason Peters. We've been saying that for the last few years. They brought him back. They paid him even more to go out and play tackle after Andre Dillard went down. I just don't see him finishing the season. I don't know how he's going to do it. And you heard Doug say today, he was fatigued. That's what happened to Peters at the end of the game. And we talk about it, the amount of times that this guy is not able to finish the game. And again, I always say this, kudos to a Hall of Fame career. I don't want to take anything away from what he's accomplished in the past, but it's definitely, it's time. I mean, but they don't have any other options. And Jason Peters is the best bet to go out there at this point, unless somebody else is going to edge him out. I don't see that happening. But it's only a matter of time until he taps out yet again. And this offensive line goes through another week where they have yet another new face on their number one reps.
Talking about finding someone to beat them out, do they have anybody to go and take Nate Geary's spot? I mean, if you just stare and watch 47 the entire game, you would see some of the most inept linebacker play you've ever seen in your life. I don't know how they watch the tape and think that this guy's helping them at all. I feel like, and Scott, you gave him a D, I feel like teams are now game planning and targeting right at him.
I think the Rams were the team that exposed him. You look at what Tyler Higbee did against him. What he was able to do down the field exposed him, and I think that yesterday we saw the Bengals feed off of that. Just run him down, and you've got every tight end so far that has beat him. And, then you could say, okay, well, if we have diagnosed that Nate Geary is a weakness covering downfield, we need to not put him in a position where he will fail. And that goes to coaching. So, okay, what's Jim Schwartz going to do to play chess against that? You've got to give him help. You've got to leave somebody who's going to be able to help him out down the field after a certain point, or you've just got to not send him out on coverage in any way, shape, or form in that way. There's definitely things they've got to do to cover that up. And until they do, everybody's going to expose. Could you imagine if Kittle was available this week against Nate Geary? I mean, it would just be.
He might be. He's not officially out. I mean,
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. He could be available. And if I'm the Niners and if I'm Kittle, I'm getting myself ready because I could have a career night against him unless the Eagles can figure out something else they're going to do to help Nate Gary out. He is lost out there. He can't hang in that kind of coverage. And until they do something different, I just don't see any other team stopping it.
Another person who stood out to me that was a little sloppy defensively was Avonte Maddox. Now, he ended up getting hurt. At one point, him and Slay were both out, and on the outside, I believe it was Roby Coleman and Trevor Williams, someone who you cut twice and brought back.
Well, this has been a theme, and I've mentioned this before. I know that every other team out there deals with injuries, but doesn't it just seem like this team deals with more than most? And it's like week to week to week, and nobody ever talks about that. And I just want to know what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, it's funny you say that, Scott.
I'm
watching the game yesterday. My buddy's at my house. He's a Cowboys fan, and they have a lot of injuries too. And the whole day we're having this conversation. He's like, well, we're missing this guy. I said, welcome to our world. We're missing guys every single week, multiple guys. And, you know, where it really gets you, and this is where they got killed a couple of years ago, where – having injuries is one thing, but when you have multiple injuries to the same position group, you know, when you're losing like 4 corners, it's different than you have a corner hurt, a tackle hurt, a linebacker hurt. You got 4 guys in the same position grouping. That's what's going on at wide receiver right now. It happened yesterday with corner in the game where you're losing guys who play the same position.
And also, real quick, like Sidney Jones, missing out on that pick. Now, imagine if Sidney Jones, or just a cornerback in general, is your starting outside corner, and then Avonte Maddox is your backup. That's a little bit better than going from Avonte Maddox to Trevor Williams.
Well, and you had Douglas in that scene. You took Jones in the second round, Douglas in the third round. Jones can't play. Douglas apparently can. They just couldn't get it out of him. No, I mean, he's playing okay but that's a second and third round pick that didn't help you.
No, absolutely. And it's just and the problem is the lack of depth too. I mean, that's what you have to have. They want to, you know, it's all well and good. You want to walk around and start saying, hey, it's next man up mentality around here. That's fine, but the next man has to have some ability, or what are we doing? And I just don't feel like this team has built depth. You know, that was what got them to the Super Bowl. They had depth at the positions they needed it the most. And here they just have not built solid depth. And you look at the receivers, and like Howie Roseman, it needs to be indicted too. I should have included him after, you know, he has missed on a lot of draft picks at wide receiver. I'm excited about Rager. I think he will stick, but I'm not sure about Hightower. I'm not sure about, obviously Nelson Aguilar they let go. You got to call that a fail. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is like a ghost running around out there. When he is on the field, you don't notice him because you never hear his name called.
Ever.
And you look at the guys they could have had, like DK Metcalf was picked after Arcega-Whiteside. You kidding me? Like there's just been so many misses with the draft picks, and it's killing their depth, and it's just I think in turn killing this team because they can't tread water when they need to, and they're in the worst division in football, and all they have to do is tread a little bit of water.
Yeah, well,
and
guess what?
You're leading.
Scott, they've got San Francisco, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh coming up here. I mean, there's a good reality that 5-1 could be staring at them in the face. And then they have a brutal stretch later in the year with Green Bay, the Saints, Seattle, Arizona. I mean, this has the makings of one of those years where, man, something might have to change at the end. You know, if you end up with a 4-12 and a 4-11-1 or whatever the heck you might end up with, the way that schedule looks like, we might be having Grayson's grades and talking about big changes to either the quarterback position, the coaching position, or the general manager position. But check out
or all three.
Or all three. There you go. Check out Grayson's grades right now at 973ESPN.com, and make sure you check them out after every Eagles game. Don't forget to catch Scott on Fox 29, Props and Locks, Friday nights. I had you on 10:30 on Fox TV, Fox 29 with Scott Grayson. All right, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Have a good one, guys.
All right. He is the host of the Props and Locks show on Fox 29. He's also, of course, our Eagles writer for the last 4 seasons with Grayson's grades after every Eagles game. So check them out at 973ESPN.com. They're brought to you by Cross County Connection, the region's transportation management association. DriveLess.com. Go to www.driveless.com.